Okay, everyone. We're going to get this meeting on the road. This is our town meeting for the town of Conway, 2022. This is where we conduct our business, our financial business, and our rules and regulations and our bylaws. We deal with all of that during this meeting today. I've heard there's a lot of new people here who've never been to a town meeting before. Just play along. We'll all have fun. I'm going to address some things first before we go. First of all, the red doors there, I know they've been open in the past, but they were open earlier, and the way the air conditioning and ventilating system works here, when we closed them, it got much cooler in here because we're taking air out of the cooler building than outside. So those are going to remain closed. And I think we'll all be pretty comfortable. It would look that way. That's the first thing. Second thing is I'd like to point out that at the table to my right are the select board, town council, and the town administrator. On the table to the left of me is the town clerk and the very hardworking people of the finance committee. Okay? Another technical note before we even get going. We have to allow people from out of town, we have to agree that they can speak. So I believe the list I have is for the grammar school, it would be Kristen Gordon, Frontier would be Darius Modesto, and Shelley Barina. And Franklin County Tech, I do see Superintendent Richard Martin here. So can we agree right now that if it comes time to work on the schools, we can speak? They can let them speak? Yes? Beautiful. Okay. Okay. Next thing we're going to talk about is clickers. This wonderful invention that we started using last year. You can vote yes, no, or 3, abstain. You can hit these buttons during a vote as many times as you want, but it's only going to record the last button you pushed when the vote is done. So there's really no way to vote more than once, so don't worry about that. Okay, so I guess we're going to test this right now. So let's just pretend I asked the question. Let's vote. Okay, we seem to be up and working there, and that's wonderful. Always the police chief. Well, that's the worst glitch we have today. We're going to be all right. Okay. I'm going to explain to you right now how this works. Meaning, if you wish to speak on a subject, what you're going to do is raise your hand and wait to be recognized. Okay? When you're called upon, we're going to see how it works for the person who's called upon to come to the microphone, state your name and the road you live on, and try to keep your discussion or comment to 2 minutes. Okay? We all understand that? Okay? And when speaking, this is from, I'm Jimmy Recor, by the way, I'm your moderator. When speaking, please be kind, civil, And don't resort to what my grandchildren call potty words. No matter how loud you speak, no one voice carries more weight than anyone else here today. We are all equal. Can we conform to those rules, please? If not, I will ask you to sit down and rethink what you're saying. Okay. Let's call this meeting to order. Article 1, Phil?
I move that town meeting vote to accept the town reports as printed in the town annual report. I move the town meeting vote to accept the town reports as printed in the town annual report.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Are we voice voting this or click voting this? Click voting? Okay. Okay, voting is open. Five more seconds. Voting's closed. Okay, it passed. Article 2. Article 2.
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate for line items 114 through 900 of Article 2 as presented in the warrant for a subtotal of $2,655,670.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Employee costs.
Line 9, are you looking for an explanation on line 900? Yes. Employee costs?
I can speak to that. I'm Jan Warner, treasurer. I live on Whately Road. Employee costs consist of Franklin retirement assessments, health insurance, life insurance, Medicare, and these usually fluctuate a little bit depending on how many insured employees we have. Our health insurance stayed constant this year. We had no increase or decrease, so we're happy with that. And basically the increase in this line item is due to cost of living increases. As the total wages go up, our Medicare contributions, retirement contributions, et cetera, increase slightly. Any other questions?
Thank you. Oh, hand up in the back.
Yes.
Hey, the name's Donovan on the Hoosac Turnpike. I'd like to ask the assessors, what's the state got us for free cash, and what's the state have us, the whole town assessed for? What's the value of the town?
Lee Whitcomb speaking for the assessors. The town has our entire town value is $298 million, plus or minus a bit. Not plus a, yeah, plus a bit. The free cash came in at
428.
428,000. And you'll see now motions to spend from that, which will leave us a balance, if all go through, of about 14,000.
So just to follow up, then that means that for every $298,000 we spend, it's $1 on the tax rate.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Line 114 through 900?
So, just so that everybody can be aware that so what we're voting on now, this is the town's general operating budget aside from the schools. Last year, the increase in the general operating budget was $83,000 or 3.17%, and it included just a 2.5% raise for all town employees. This year, the increase is just $2,000 over last year, which is 0.1%, and it includes a 3% cost of living adjustment for the town employees. So that's progress by anybody's definition if you're trying to lower the cost of town government, or lower the increase in the cost of town government.
Excuse me, could you identify yourself? Bucky, you need to come up here so we can hear you.
Did we get COVID relief funds? How much was that, Phil?
It's 485. RP. Right. So there were several different flavors of COVID relief fund. There was ESSER, there was CARES Act, and now there's ARPA. The ARPA, which is what we've already spent the rest. ARPA was 485 total, but 568, and of that. So that money, some of that was applied to lower this year's assessment, dollar for dollar.
This year's or last year's?
This year's. 118,000 was applied to lower this year's assessment, in effect, but through lowering the cost of our schools. We also have spent some under $10,000 on some treasurer software. We spent some. We've spent some money. We're spending now on beginning the rehab and the repurposing of the public safety building to make it useful for the current and future.
So I guess my point is that's monies that we did not have otherwise. Correct.
That you did not what?
That we did not raise and appropriate that.
That is correct.
That's monies that came in from wherever they came from, okay?
Right.
So that going into this year's budget.
It's not reflected in our budget at all.
So our tax increase is significantly higher if that's not included. You're not spending this on anything related to this budget whatsoever. And why couldn't we spend that money?
Yes, we spent. So we spent $118,000 to lower.
But you say you got $400,000 roughly.
That's correct. That's correct. And we felt that it was important that the public safety building really needs work, and we've set about to do it. There's no, running water, septic, that sort of thing.
And what's what's that magic figure for that? What's the cost of that upgrade?
Yeah, I mean, we don't know what the final cost is going to be, but we've committed the ARPA money to get it to the point where the engineer and everybody can begin to give us estimates.
My only point was to include those monies into kind of what we're talking about here. so. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult because we're spending that outside of the context of town meeting. But we're doing it in
But it's on Conway projects. It's on
Oh.
projects in town.
it's on projects in town, but, and we have, I believe, 4 years to spend that amount of money. And we thought that it was unwise to spend it all in the first year because we don't know what, they've taken a lot of the restrictions off in terms of what we can spend it on. And that was a moving target for 6 months or so.
Okay, I just want to bring up the point. I don't want to belabor it, but thank you.
Any other questions?
Jimmy, can I just speak to that for a sec? Okay, sorry. With the ARPA funds, the important thing, what we're being told is that those funds should not be used for your general annual operating expenses. Because then that means that basically you're adding things in that in the future you're going to have to continue to pay for. So ARPA funds are really to be used for special projects or one-time expenses. I hope that makes it more clear. And I can certainly give people our running tally anytime.
Any other? Okay. We ready to vote on Department 114 through 900, or 900? Okay, let's vote. Five more seconds. Vote closed. Article 2B.
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate for line items 300A and 300B of Article 2 as presented in the warrant for a subtotal of $2,086,307. Carries.
Do I have a second? I have a second. Discussion? Seeing no discussion, would you like to vote? Voting is open. Voting is closed. Article 2, Part C. Oh, that just passed, I'm sorry, as has everything else so far. Part C.
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate for line items 310A, 310B, and 310C of Article 2 as presented in the warrant for a subtotal of $1,571,659.
I heard a second. Any discussion? Okay, let's vote. Voting's open. Five more seconds. Voting's closed. That is also moved. Article 2, Part D.
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate for line items 320A, 320B, and 320C of Article 2 as presented in the warrant for a subtotal of $183,261.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Joe Stragowski is asking how many students?
I believe we went from 4 students to 10 students, but Superintendent Martin is here.
Yes, that would be correct. We went from 4 students to 10 students in the past few years. We were at 6 and 5, and then about 8, 9 years ago, we were like 10, 11, and 12. So we're kind of going way back to the number that we were at previously. That's $176,212, which is the increase from the $71,783 from the year before. And we don't have all that stuff. The per pupil cost for Franklin County Tech was $17,621, which is $1,000 lower than it's been in past years, and that's due because our budget increased by 6.7%, but our enrollment increased 9.8%. So that level of efficiency lowered our per pupil cost. Okay, thank you. Any more discussion? Let's vote on Article 2, Part D. Five more seconds. Voting's closed. That also passed. Article 2, Part E.
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate for line items 330A and 330B of Article 2 as presented in the warrant for a subtotal of $76,344 and a total in Article 2 of $6,573,331.
Do I have a second? Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing no hands, let's vote. Voting's open. Five more seconds.
Voting is closed. Article 2, Part E, passed. Article 3.
I move that the town vote to transfer $82,000 from the Grammar School Capital Stabilization Fund to the general fund for the capital expenses of the Conway Grammar School.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, let's vote on Article 3. Voting's open. Five more seconds. Voting's closed. The article passes. Okay, that was a 2/3 vote. I'm just reminding you that, and we did that easily. Article 4.
I move that the town vote to transfer $52,000 from free cash to the Conway Grammar School Capital Stabilization Fund.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, let's open voting for it. Five more seconds. Motion is passed. Article 5.
I move that the town vote to approve setting the salaries of elected officials as provided by Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 41, Section 108, to be made effective from July 1st, 2022, as presented in the budget.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? Seeing no well,
Name is Aaron DeMayo, Main Poland Road. I actually just wanted an explanation of what that 108 MGL 41 actually was. And just also wanted to make a quick point, not related, but I think that everyone should be aware of, is when I'm looking down the ballots of the town, you know, there's no parity. You know, I see all these votes, it's 3-0, 4-0. You know, you always need an 11th person, an 11th man, 11th woman to maybe offer an opinion of dissent or have that discussion. And to have not one single article be opposed by anyone is just a little disturbing, and I think people should be aware of that. Okay, one out of them. Thank you for the one, but you see the point. So anyways, wanted that explanation and just wanted to bring that up to the town, and it makes me a little uneasy.
So, to answer your, for Aaron, to answer your question, I'm going to be introducing Conway's new town attorney, town council, Donna McNichol, to answer it. But before that, just to address the latter part of your question about dissension and unanimity, and the process of getting a warrant, getting the language on a warrant article it's not someone doesn't come in and say, this is what I want, vote on it. There's a whole give and take process, and a lot of it involves making changes so that each of us are comfortable with where it is. It's not, you know, I know, just speaking for myself, I'm not afraid to say no to anybody or anything, and I know that that's true of the rest of us too on the select board. There's no rubber stamp here, in my opinion. Certainly not for me. And with that, Donna
Good afternoon. Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 108, referenced in this warrant article, is the statute that requires you annually to approve elected officials' salaries over and above just approving the budget. So it's a standard warrant article in every town meeting warrant, annual town meeting warrant, so that you're approving the elected officials. To shorten it a bit, it's, as you'll notice, it says as approved, as detailed in the budget, so that you don't, in fact, have to reiterate all the elected officials' salaries. But that's certainly an option if people would prefer going forward, that all of the elected officials' salaries that you're approving are listed in that article as well. But you can see them clearly in the budget.
Any other questions for Article 5? Seeing no other questions, I'm open in voting. Five more seconds. Voting is closed. The article is moved. Article 6.
I move that the town vote to transfer $150,000 from free cash to the Capital Improvements Stabilization Fund.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? He's asking how much is in the account right now.
So there was a handout, I don't know if everyone picked one up, and it lists a number of accounts. We don't have a single account. I'm not sure if you have a specific account you're wondering about. You know, we have an ambulance reserved fund, and at the end of town meeting, we're going to withdraw a little out of it, but at the end of town meeting, there'll be $21,000 left. We have the ambulance stabilization fund. There'll be $222,000 left. We use that for purchasing a future ambulance. Capital stabilization fund at the end of town meeting, we'll have $337,000 in there. We'll use that for some large truck purchases we see coming up. And because we're not withdrawing any money from that stabilization fund this year. We have a grammar school stabilization fund, and we have a general stabilization fund. They're all detailed in this handout that was out by the front door.
The current balance of the capital stabilization fund is $187,663.
Any other questions, Article 6? Seeing no more hands, let's vote. Five more seconds. Voting is closed. Motion passed. Article 7.
I move that the town vote to approve the creation of a new fire truck stabilization fund.
Do I have a second? Discussion?
Hi, Roy Cohen on Roaring Brook Road and on the Finance Committee. What I want to say is that this article brings up what to me is confusing and somewhat inconsistent, whether it's the naming of the funds, the stabilization funds, or what, because we have an ambulance fund, we've got a grammar school stabilization. Okay, we have a capital stabilization fund in general, just a general name, which in fact has really become, it's really a highway, police, and even building stabilization fund. So I just think it's confusing, and it gets further confusing because our capital improvements planning committee has not been meeting, and our master schedule for major expense replacements is not functioning. So the point of that was so we don't have shoot from the hip type of major $600,000 type expenses. So I'm not sure. So A, do we need a fire truck stabilization fund? I guess that's my question. And even though, and this is after some reflection, after I voted along with the rest of the Finance Committee to recommend it, I've since had doubts because when you look at it, to me, there is inconsistency because do we need a bucket loader stabilization fund? Do we need a greater stabilization fund? And if we don't, then in my mind, the fire truck stabilization fund should be just part of the overall capital stabilization fund, if you will. And that's all I need to say.
Nelson Chiflet from Shelburne Falls Road. One of the fire trucks, fire equipment, highway department equipment seems to be topics that we discuss at town meetings, and we discuss whether or not we want to spend X amount of money on a grader or whatever, a tank truck, whether or not it's needed. It would seem to me that this process of creating a stabilization fund for a particular piece of equipment sort of bypasses that process. Because once we have enough money into the stabilization fund to buy the piece of equipment, although it may result from good long-term planning, there's no longer discussion necessary about whether or not we need it and we should spend that money. So I think I agree, Mr. Cohen, this probably does not make sense.
Thank you.
So,
Phil?
creating a fire truck stabilization fund is something you would not want to do if you don't want a new fire truck. Once we create one and put money into it, it's for the purpose of getting a fire truck. So whether you make that decision once the existing fire truck breaks down and you need to come up with $800,000 or $1 million or whatever to get a new one right then and borrow it all, or whether you want to do this 6, 7, 8 years out, save up money gradually so that you can borrow either nothing or a lot less, which seems to be the Conway way to go about. We've seen in past large-scale projects like that, we've done a mix of saving and borrowing to reduce the need to borrow a lot. So, the specific need for this, I would invite the Fire Chief Bob Baker to address. He's here, but basically this is equipment that is on a schedule, and once it gets to, I believe it's 20 or 25 years, they get replaced. This is equipment that has to work. When they drive up in front of a burning house, it has to work. So that's why we take care of that equipment, and when it's time to get a new one, that's what you do. And this is the first step in getting a new piece of fire equipment. It's to borrow early, get interest over time, but not borrow, but fund a stabilization fund for this purpose, collect interest over time, reduce the cost when it comes time to get one.
Howard Boyden?
Hi, Howard Boyden, right across the road here. I think the Finance Committee has, or Roy has a good point there, but when it comes to a fire truck isn't what it used to be. I own 2 of the old fire trucks that I use in the maple business now, and they were a standard chassis with parts bolted onto them. A fire truck nowadays is custom built from the ground up. It's not a $100,000 or even a $200,000 piece of equipment. I think by having a fire truck stabilization fund, it's a way, as was spoken, of being proactive and not being hit right in the gut when all of a sudden on the same year we need a new bucket loader or we need a building repaired because a tree fell on it or whatever and it wasn't insured properly. Whatever big expense comes along, at least we have this money set aside for our emergency equipment. And we don't have a backup fire truck. We have backup towns, but most of them are 35 minutes away. And then they've got to page them out, and the guy's got to go to the station because they're not call departments. So once again, it's just a way of being proactive. I think we have a lot of stabilization funds, but I think this is a place to actually have one and to use it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Jan?
I would just like to point out that a stabilization account or fund still takes 2/3 vote to use. So it's not like the fire department can just go out and buy a new truck when there's enough money there. Still takes a vote. And as far as I know, it can still be put on the regular replacement schedule by the Capital Improvements Committee. So having this fund does not preclude you from doing any of that. It just sets a separate pocket aside so you have the money when you need it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Tom Donovan, we can't hear you anytime you speak. I'm sorry.
A 4 or 5 years ago, on the warrant was an article, $450,000 for a new pumper truck. Same year, we voted to do it.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, let's vote on Article 7. Five more seconds. Voting's closed. And vote is passed. Article 8.
I move that the town vote to transfer $100,000 from free cash into the fire truck stabilization fund.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? Chief Baker?
Robert Baker, Fire Chief. I live on Elm Street. I presented this article to our Select Board and our Finance Committee because we tried to, in the last few years, have tried to replace our pieces of equipment every 25 years. The truck that we're thinking about replacing in 2028 is a 2003 model unit now. So I have asked that we place either $100,000 or $150,000 a year away for the next 5 to 6 years, so that when it comes time to purchase it, we would have enough money. When I got around to trying to figure out what the cost would be, our last truck was $435,000. I estimated, and it's strictly nothing but an estimate, that $650,000 will be needed to buy a new truck. Unfortunately, this was presented to the Select Board and the Finance Committee in December. If you were remember reading some of these town articles from other towns that voted to purchase trucks this year, they're spending $650,000 on a truck. So in 6 years, God only knows what it's going to cost you. So that's why I'm asking them to have the money put aside. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing no other hands, let's vote on Article 8. Five more seconds. Voting's closed. And the article is moved. So it's passed. Article 9.
I move that the town vote to transfer $7,400 from free cash to the general fund for 2 portable speed radar detectors.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Sir.
Hi, Chris Waldo, Conway Road. Conway Road. Sorry about that. Orchard Street. So the question is, do these capture photos, or is it just a deterrent?
Chief Wilmette?
These are merely the same ones you're seeing that most towns have. Just displays the speed, maybe a happy face or a sad face. That's all.
Any other questions? Okay, let's open voting on Article 9. Five more seconds. Voting is closed. Article 9 also passes. Article 10.
I move that the town vote to transfer $27,762 from the ambulance receipts reserved fund for a partial payment for ambulance department operational expenses.
Do I have a second? Discussion. Seeing no discussion, let's vote on Article 10. Five more seconds. Voting's closed. And this article also passes. Article 11.
I move that the town vote to transfer $60,000 from the ambulance receipts reserved fund into the ambulance stabilization fund.
Do I have a second? Discussion. Seeing no discussion, let's vote on Article 11. Five more seconds. Voting is closed. Article 11 has passed. Article 12.
I move that the town vote to transfer $5,000 from free cash to the general fund for ongoing ambulance training.
I have a second. Any discussion? Seeing no hands, let's vote on Article 12. Five more seconds. Voting is closed. Article 12 has passed. Article 13.
I move that the town vote to transfer $3,600 from free cash to the general fund for ambulance department 800 megahertz emergency pagers.
Do I have a second? Discussion. Would you like to speak, Chief?
You're going to see that this article and then the very one, the next one after for the fire department. Our Massachusetts State Police does our dispatching for all emergency services, and for the fire and ambulance crews, it's done with a little black box like this right here. This past year, they went to a new 800 megahertz system, which is twice as powerful as the other system we were on. And they also included, when they went to the 400 years ago, they put a grant out to let us buy these boxes with. At this point, because they're going to the new 800 megahertz, they don't have a grant available at this point. They're looking for one, and they're hoping they're going to come up for one, but the deadline to go to the new 800 pagers is December 31st of this year. So between the ambulance account for $3,600 and the fire department for $18,000, if this money becomes available through the state with a grant or the county with a grant, this money would be reimbursed back to the free cash account or never used. Well, we just had to put this figure in here to cover our basis because of December 31st. If we have no money to buy pagers, you people are out of business.
Thank you, Chief. Any other discussion? Seeing none, let's vote on Article 13. Five more seconds. Voting is closed. Article 13 has also passed. Article 14.
I move that the town vote to transfer $18,000 from free cash to the general fund for the fire department 800 megahertz emergency pagers.
I have a second. Any discussion? Let's vote on Article 14. Five more seconds. Voting is closed. Article 14 has passed. Article 15.
I move that the town vote to transfer $20,000 from free cash into the OPEB trust fund.
Any second? Would you like to speak to this, Jan?
I'll just answer your questions before they're asked. OPEB stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits. And by law, we're required to keep track of our liability. It's currently close to 1.7 million. So that's a lot of money, and we're nowhere near close to having that much money set aside to pay for this. It includes mostly health insurance benefits for retirees. So currently we have a balance of $89,000 in that account. And when we get our audit each year, they notice that we don't have enough money in there. And the fact that we're saving a little bit gives us some credit so that it doesn't hit us too hard on our financial reports. If we should go out to borrow to borrow money, a bank would see that we're at least doing something about it. It's not required at this time, but I think the Finance Committee and the Select Board recommend that it's a good idea to put a small amount in each year.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, let's vote on Article 15. Five more seconds. Voting is closed. Article 15 has passed. Article 16.
I move that the town vote to transfer $13,867 from free cash to the general fund for partial debt service for the highway garage.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, let's vote on Article 16. Five more seconds. Voting is closed. Article 16 has passed. Article 17.
I move that the town vote to transfer $10,000 from free cash to the tax title revolving account to assist the treasurer in collecting delinquent taxes.
Do I have a second? Any discussion?
Hi, Sebastian Meyer, Shelburne Falls Road. Could you just explain, $10,000 to collect, how that works?
That's me again. When taxes are delinquent, I have to go through a whole process of advertising them in the newspaper and, sending multiple notices and then filing them at the Franklin County Registry of Deeds. And sometimes it also requires some legal assistance. So this allows me to pay those expenses. They are charged back onto the delinquent taxpayer's bill, so we do recover it at the end. It's kind of a wash, but I have to have some pot of money to spend from to do that.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, let's vote on Article 17. Five more seconds. Voting is closed. Article 17 has passed. Article 18.
I move that the town vote to transfer $10,000 from free cash to the general fund compensated absences account.
Do I have a second? I have a second. Discussion? Nelson? Explanation. I give you Jan Warner.
Hello, once again. Yeah, so this is what the money that we would use to pay when somebody retires. We have to pay out their vacation time. In the past, we've relied on our budgets, which we don't really budget for this, so it can hit the town unexpectedly, especially when you have a long-term employee who's retiring. They can accumulate, up to 4 weeks vacation time, so that's what we need this money for, in case.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing no hands, let's vote on Article 18. Five more seconds. Voting is closed. Article 18 has passed. Article 19.
I move that the town vote to transfer $5,000 from free cash to the general fund to provide for the testing of diseases in mosquitoes.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote on Article 19. Five more seconds. Voting is closed. Article 19 has passed. Article 20.
I move to table Article 20.
There's a move to table Article 20. Do I have a second? Discussion? See, explanation.
It's the preference of the select board that we table this and bring this back in the December special town meeting.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, let's vote on Article 20.
Table.
That's true. We're voting to table, correct? So we're voting to table. Which is fine. 5 more seconds. Voting is closed. Article 20 has been tabled. Article 21.
I move that the town vote to transfer $5,000 from free cash to the general fund as a partial contribution for future revaluation work.
Do I have a second? Discussion.
What is future revaluation work?
The state requires a complete revaluation recertification every 5 years, having extended that from every 3 years. But they also require us to look at value changes every year, every interim year, and see if our values in town are keeping up with the market, which is our mandate. So having money in this fund allows us to both have the funds on hand to pay for the new revaluation when it comes up. For that purpose, we need to hire an outside appraiser, professional appraiser for the hydroelectric plant, for the large solar array that we have, and quite possibly coming up on Eversources, N-Stars, high tension lines, and so forth. These certainly are beyond the scope of any small town assessor's office and cost considerable sums when the time comes. By putting this $5,000 aside every year, we build up a fund which we can use as needed to hire professionals and to cover the costs of the full reval when it comes up.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, let's vote on Article 21. Five more seconds. Voting is closed. Article 21 has passed. Article 22.
I move that the town vote to transfer $5,000 from free cash to the general fund as a partial contribution to replenish the grant match and administration account.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, let's vote on Article 22. Five more seconds. Voting is closed. And Article 22 passes. Article 23.
I move that the town vote to transfer $2,775 from free cash to the field library to help ensure its accreditation.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, let's vote on Article 23. Five more seconds. Voting is closed. Article 23 has passed. Article 24.
I move that the town vote to authorize the treasurer to spend up to $5,000 from the Medicaid revolving fund to pay related reimbursement fees.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, let's vote on Article 24. If you have a child in child care and your name is Jack, could you please go outside? Five more seconds. Voting is closed. Article 24 is passed. Article 25.
I move that the town vote to authorize the Select Board to request special legislation allowing Ken Wimet to serve on the police department after the age of 65 until the date of his retirement or until his non-reappointment.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, let's vote on Article 25. Five more seconds. Voting is closed. Article 25 has passed. Article 26.
I move that the town vote to authorize the Select Board to request special legislation allowing Randall Williams to serve on the police department after the age of 65 until the date of his retirement or until his non-reappointment.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing no hands, let's vote on Article 26. Five more seconds. Voting is closed. Article 26 is passed. Article 27.
I move that the town vote to allow the Select Board to apply for, accept, and expend state, federal, and other grants which do not require a town appropriation or town meeting approval.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion? Seeing no discussion, let's vote on Article 27. Five more seconds. Voting is closed. Article 27 has passed. Article 28.
I move that the town vote to authorize the Select Board to acquire by eminent domain a permanent easement for public safety, flood control, removal of the berm, and other municipal purposes related to the South River Flood Resiliency Project and other municipal purposes over the following described parcel. A portion of the property at 69 Main Street, Assessor's Tax Map 102, Lot 2.1, owned by South River Trust, John R. Evans, trustee. That portion of the property lying southerly of the current South River location, consisting of 4.3 acres more or less, Franklin County Registry of Deeds, Book 2867, page 169.
Do I have a second? I have a motion and second. Discussion? Joe Stragowski?
Joe Stragowski, Reedsbridge Road. I've been working on with a number of people in town for the last 10, 11 years. I think 10 or 11 years ago, we tried to buy this property for in the area of $300,000. The owner was unwilling to sell. At that time, there was a livable house on the property. The building then burned down. Last year, we asked you for money and tried to buy the property again, and it failed. We worked with Donna McNichols, our new town council, and we just couldn't make it happen. So we're here again, this time asking for eminent domain to take an easement on the property so that we can assess whether that piece of property can be used for flood control or we need a new bridge on Main Street. And part of the engineering study is to allow us to go onto the property to take measurements and do a hydraulic study so we can determine once and for all what the problem is and why we have flooding on Main Street. So I'm asking you to support this article. Do you want to say anything? Any questions? Any questions for me? Nelson?
Microphone.
Microphone, please.
I'd ask for Joe to explain a little further the event, the flood that we had during that major hurricane and the impact that it has on the discussion that we're having right now.
I guess since I've been in town, I think Main Street is flooded at least twice, possibly 3 times. Due to Irene was one, Gloria, I believe, was another one. Those are the 2 that I remember. The water doesn't make it around the turn and get under the bridge. And it may have something to do with Pumpkin Hollow, when there's flow of water from Pumpkin Hollow and South River. And that's part of what this engineering study would do to help us determine the cause of the flooding of downtown.
So, and Nelson, it was the unanimous, after Hurricane Irene, which was the real bad flooding that I remember, and the storm a month after that, it was the unanimous opinion of the first responders in town, the police chief, the fire chief, that tunnel underneath the bridge over Academy Hill Street, right by the playground, that there was not sufficient carrying capacity for the floodwaters to go under that. It backed up, and that's where the flooding really started from. The reason that this easement is so necessary is so that the grant that we've applied for, and that if this easement and if the subsequent article is approved, it's a substantial grant where the state will be doing this hydromorphological studies to determine the carrying capacity of the tunnel, the amount of flood water that it would have to go at. And what's really significant too is that if they determine that a new bridge tunnel is necessary, this sort of cuts us in line to get the state to pay for it. And that's really important because Chapter 90 is the part of the Massachusetts general law that is the funds given to towns each year for road and bridge repair. We have 60 miles of town roads. We get enough Chapter 90 money to do 2 or 3 miles a year. If you're lucky, a road lasts 10, 15 years. You do the math, it does not compute. So it's necessary for us to be smarter than just getting in the back of the line on Chapter 90 things and get ways to get ahead of the line. And this, in effect, would do that. So, and it could be the answer to the flooding, to our flooding problems. So that's why I hope people support this too.
Aaron?
Aaron DeMeo, Main Poland Road, and just a point of discussion and a question. One, this is, again, one of those things, I understand it's for the best of the town, but always sounds good when it's someone else's property and not yours. But, you know, really the precedent is that any time anyone would need to get an easement on your property at town meeting, they could just get one. A permanent easement is obviously everybody knows it reduces your value of your real estate. So my question here, is there a happy medium? Can we get a 5-year easement where we're not burdening the property owner and taking away the rights and the value of their property, or a timed easement rather than a permanent easement, and we can maybe satisfy best of both worlds.
Thank you.
So,
Meg?
yeah.
Lee Whitcomb, Ashfield Road. I have a question that goes along with Aaron's, really. An easement is usually a clearly defined access. Often looks like a road or a byway or something like that, and maybe said to be 30 feet wide or whatever. Is this therefore a permanent easement to any part and all parts of the South River Trust property?
I give you town council, Donna McNichol.
So I'll answer the assessor's question first because I think that's easier. There's all different kinds of easements. People are familiar with road easements or rights of way that everybody thinks of as easements to get onto property. But there's conservation easements, restrictions, there's all kinds. This particular easement is for a very specific portion of this property. This property is made up of 2 parcels, one north of the South River and one south, I believe. It's the southern portion that has the berm and would be the portion that is at issue for the flood resiliency project. So the property that had the house, the property that's still a building lot, the property would continue to be a building property because it's still got the area. One of the points of taking an easement rather than the property itself is that if we took this whole portion of the lot 2.1, the 4-acre parcel, he would no longer have a building lot because he'd lose the area you're required to have under zoning to have a building lot. With an easement over this portion, that lot is still a building lot. You could still build on it, you could do whatever you needed on it, but on the other side of the river, you couldn't do anything on that other side of the river that interfered with the easement, i.e. the flood resiliency project. So to basically answer your question, yes, this is a perfectly acceptable kind of legal easement that, to answer your question, it's sort of a 2-part answer. One is that as the first speaker explained, we tried to buy this property for well over the fair market value and just could not reach a deal. Just couldn't come to an agreement on that. In order to do the flood resiliency project, the state is requiring us to have a permanent easement. A 5-year easement would not do the trick. If we need that property as part of the flood resiliency project for easement purposes, not ownership purposes, but easement purposes, then we couldn't get the monies we need from the grants and everything to basically do it. We've done everything we can to acquire the property, all kinds of negotiations for a considerable amount of time. We couldn't reach agreement on it. So it's obviously up to the voters whether the flood resiliency project should go forward or not.
Janet first.
Janet says, I just want to reiterate that the property is on both sides of the river, and the building portion that burned and is probably going to be rebuilt is not affected by this. This portion that's basically floodplain and was floodplain and probably should be floodplain is unbuildable anyway. So basically, I don't see that there was going to be a huge financial change from this easement in the value of the property.
Meg? Lee. Sorry. Wonder why I said that.
My kids look like me, right? As far as we know, there's no road access to the lower portion of the property, to the part that we're discussing here. What would be
That's
the
correct.
town's- How would we get there to do work, to investigate it, survey it? morphology, whatever.
The town,
Are you
I
going
believe
to-
the town has a small parcel down there. There's no road access, you're correct.
The town does
The
not.
owner, I believe the town has an easement right down there over one of the parcels to get to it.
The town has an easement? Okay, I'd like to go over that.
Yeah, I should look.
I'd like to go over that with you, yeah.
Any other discussion, Article 28? Chief Baker.
Yes.
Yes. Any other?
Yeah. Could you give us the vote count as well as saying whether an article passes or whatever?
Of course we can.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, let's vote on Article 28. Five more seconds. Voting is closed. Okay, the vote was, it passed. It was 90 to 23 with 3 abstentions. That went quick. Okay. Article 29.
I move that the town vote to appropriate or reserve for later appropriation monies from the Community Preservation Fund as listed in the warrant, with each item considered a separate appropriation. So, paragraph A, $63,850 from the Community Preservation Fund, specifically from the unbudgeted reserve account for grant matching and/or for costs and expenses for land acquisition, rights-of-way, easements, and related costs and expenses for 2 unnumbered, unbuildable parcels along Shelburne Falls Road, owned by Judith Waldo and the heirs of Mary Bay, and for a portion of 69 Main Street owned by South River Trust, all for public safety, flood remediation, and general municipal purposes.
Do I have a second? Discussion? Michelle? I'm going to let her ask her question first. Okay.
Michelle Harris, Shelburne Falls Road. I'm just curious, the piece on Shelburne Falls Road, what is that going to be used for? For $63,000? The Mary Bay property.
Actually, the 63,850 covers a multitude of expenses having to do with the Municipal Vulnerability Grant Program, and also some additional. So these were 2 properties that we had hoped to purchase this past year, but would like to buy them this year. One of them we had originally been talking about, I believe, for a dry hydrant, and the second one we were also talking about for an Oxbow project. I don't know if you wanted to speak more to.
Basically, there's some erosion going on along Shelburne Falls Road. Some of this would be used to remediate the erosion. The other parcel, I get confused which is which, we were considering putting in a dry hydrant for the fire department. So those two parcels are between Shelburne Falls Road and the river. And then the additional money is to pay for the easement that you just voted on the previous article. And there are some other expenses that I can't remember at this point.
Just to give you the numbers, either the Waldo or the Bay property, I forget which one, is for 4,800, the other one is for 3,700. And the easement itself is 16,100? Yeah. And yes, and they are willing sellers, yes.
Michelle?
What's it being used for? We didn't answer her question.
So it was just mentioned a dry hydrant, and that piece of property is about 50 feet away from the crossing where the trucks get their water. So I'm curious why a dry hydrant would go there when the river crossing is there.
I believe technically we do not own the land between Shelburne Falls Road and the river where we drive the fire trucks across. Is that correct? That would resolve that problem in that the land would become town property. So we would own the land between the river and the road. The other thing I'd just like to point out, I believe this is a 10% grant that we're working on this time, which means the state will be matching us 10 to 1. So for every dollar we put in, we'll get $9 more. So every dollar is worth $10 in this project. And some of this money is part of our matching grant, is that correct?
Yes, it is part of the match, and last year we had to decline the grant that we were given for, let me see, it was $191,200. We had to decline that because we were unable to purchase 69 Main Street, and that was the match that we were using for the grant. So the $63,850 is actually monies that were appropriated last year that we were unable to expend. It was actually $65,000, but we spent $1,150 to get the appraisal on the easement. And so that's why we took the number down. So this is monies that have actually already been voted last year, then they were returned, and so we're just asking for them again this year to try to do the same project that we wanted to do last year.
Janet?
Just very quickly for verification, some of this is for more detailed design work. So the two properties we're talking about are next to each other and are unbuildable in terms buildable. But these funds would allow us to get the grant and the detailed engineering to go forward, and I'm sure that would include additional public input. You know, we would expect to see the draft designs and have interested folks comment. We had originally suggested in there would be, after the work was done, we'd have a little nature walk and maybe historical plaques. It would give a little more river access. But this, one of the next phases then would be to get permitting approved through the state. So I just want to assure folks, and particularly Michelle, that nothing major is happening immediately in terms of shovels going in there.
Okay. Any other discussion? 29A. Okay, let's vote. This needs to be a 2/3 vote, I've been told by the town council. Five more seconds. Voting is closed. (88 to 16), it's passed the 2/3 requirement. Okay. I'm going to ask you to all do me a big favor, because I got to ask a question of the town council, and during that, I really think it would be nice for you all if you just stood up. If you want to stand up, stand up. We'll take a little stand-up break.
Well, fingers crossed, because the one that got a whole lot of talk was this one.
No, the shift just reminded me to ask at the end of the meeting.
Oh, then we won't be
Standing up is pretty popular, by the way.
All right.
Actually, I don't. It would be the hardest point from the red one. I could go for that. Actually,
So you're not at the,
I'm just a referee.
These clippers are great.
I know.
They save time.
That's Ross. I love that guy. Just for that, he pissed excellence anyway. But just having these is so wonderful. And I'm sorry to say, but it takes away from people looking around and saying, "Oh, I'm not going to It's true. Apparently, standing up was a good thought. Huh?
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. When I teach Hunter Ed stuff if it's long classes? Sure. Okay, everybody. Let's sit down and get back to work. Okay, we're going to pick up where we left off. We are on Article 29, Section B.
Thank you. Section B, $42,388 request from the Conway Historical Society for the Archibald McLeish Stonehouse renovation project from the Historic Resources Reserve account.
Do I have a second? Discussion. Explanation. Sure.
Hi, everybody. I'm Peter Engelman, Reeds Bridge Road, and I'm the president of the Historical Society. Closer? Sorry. I hope everyone's had a chance to take a look at the information we handed out on the McLeish Stonehouse project. I think it gives you a good idea of McLeish's very prominent position in the history of American arts and letters. It goes into his many honors and awards. The guy won 3 Pulitzer Prizes, which is pretty remarkable. And we tried to outline his contributions to Conway over the years. He had a big part to play in the Conway swimming pool, getting that off the ground, or in the ground. He did a lot for the Field Memorial Library, and many other things. He's really the most well-known and accomplished Conway resident of the last 100 years. Yet we don't have a memorial to him in town. We really have nothing except his gravestone in Pine Grove Cemetery. We have an incredible memorial to Marshall Field that he built himself for the town in memory of his parents, but also kind of for himself, for his own memorial, but nothing for McLeish. And I think this stone house, the little writing cottage in Pine Hill, can be that memorial for Archibald McLeish. And I think it would be a suitable one, but we really can't wait much longer. It's been about 40 years since McLeish died, since it was last used, and it is falling into disrepair. The roof especially is not in great shape, and we're going to run into a problem with the leaking roof and damages from that. So I really think now's the time to take this on. Conceptually, this is really the same project that came before you in 2020 at town meeting, except that now we're much farther advanced in research and planning, and we have a local group, the Historical Society, that's in charge of things instead of an outside entity. So I think that's important. We also have the support of the Select Board, the support of the Community Preservation Committee, the support of the Historical Commission, and I want to say thank you to Sarah Williams and the other members of the Commission for all their hard work on this project to date. They put a lot of time and effort into it. And I think it bodes well for Conway and the future of preserving history in Conway, that the Historical Commission and the Historical Society have shown that they can work really well together and work closely. Our goal is really a simple one. It's to preserve and renovate the structure and make it accessible to all of you, to the town. We plan to have it open on summer Sundays when the Historical Society is also open. We'll certainly have it open for the Festival of the Hills. We plan to hold programs there, possibly our summer picnic, possibly poetry readings. We want to open it up to school classes from the grammar school, from the high school, from local colleges, and possibly other outside groups that are interested in using it. Right now we have a budget of about $50,000 The Historical Society has raised a little over $7,000, including $1,000 from Greenfield Savings Bank. So I give them a thanks for that, for their generosity. And nearly 40 individuals have also donated money to this project in town, which I think is pretty impressive. And I do also want to take the opportunity to thank Bill and Liv Bloomer for donating it to the society and for being very generous in doing that. I want to also make it clear that we will not come back and ask the town for more money. This is a one-time only ask. The Historical Society will take on the costs of the stone house in the future. We'll pay the insurance, the maintenance, the upkeep, so we won't be coming back for more. And I'd also just like to remind everyone, because I know there's a lot of newcomers in town too, that the Community Preservation Act funds, it's money that's already been taken out of your taxes. This is not a new appropriation. It's not going to come out of your money this year. This is sitting in a fund. And then, I don't know if anyone from the Community Preservation committee's here, but there's a lot of money in the fund now. Do you guys know about how much? It's close to $1 million, I believe.
Almost $1 million.
Almost $1 million. So there's a lot of money there. We're not really using it that quickly. We're asking for about $42,000. So I think this is the kind of project that the Preservation Act was really created for. I hope you'll support it, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Oh, sorry.
Hi, I'm Mary McClintock. I live if you step out that door and roll down the hill, you'll hit my house. So in the previous time when we were discussing this, there was a whole question about ownership. And so I have a question about, you referred to this being given to the Historical Society. So one question is, who owns what part of that area and that building?
Right, so it's a small piece of land with a structure on it. It's about a 2-acre piece of land. And the people that own it now, the Bloomers, are going to lease it to the society first, and then it'll become the society's upon their deaths or when they sell the house, sell the property.
But you haven't got the lease yet. This is all still...
It's in the process. The attorneys are working on it as we speak, pretty much.
I mean, one of the concerns in the past was, well, if that isn't all settled, how do we then, do money for it? So that's one question. The other question is, I love the idea of using a space like that for events. I mean, in California, in high school, I read Archibald MacLeish, and I was blown away when I found out I was moving to his town when I actually moved here.
Yeah.
So, I love Archibald MacLeish. If there's going to be events and stuff, and I think about poetry readings, or I think about, school classes going, that to me starts sounding like accessibility issues with the building. It sounds like parking issues. It sounds like traffic and road maintenance issues. And is that all part of the plan?
Yes.
Because right now, I mean, you'd be like walking across a field to get there. Is that correct?
Right, so part of the plan is to build an accessible path to create 2 accessible parking spaces, and then there'll be plenty of other parking room along Pine Hill for people to park.
Where along Pine Hill?
There is space there. We've had enough people up there to test it out,
Okay.
checking out the site.
Okay.
So we easily have parked 15 or 20 cars there. It's not a problem. We're not going to have Woodstock up there. It's not going to be a lot of people.
Bummer.
We're
Okay.
talking about Historical Society functions,
Uh-huh.
which, are 25 to 50 people usually.
Okay.
And probably the most people will be during the Festival of the Hills.
Mhm.
And that'll be, not a lot of people there at one time. It'll be coming and going. So I don't see that being a real issue. It's not going to be open that often. We'll certainly open it more if there's interest and demand for that. But I really don't see that as being a problem at all.
And so in terms of, if we vote and say, yep, CPA money for this,
Right.
and then the whole leasing arrangement falls through or something,
The money stays
then the money
with
stays.
the town, right?
Okay, so okay.
If anything falls through, the money doesn't come to us.
Okay.
And the way the CPA appropriations work, it's not like we get a check. we have to submit invoices to a town account to get reimbursed.
Okay.
So the money doesn't go anywhere until we've actually sent
Done something.
invoices in.
Okay.
So if terrible things happen and whatever, the money doesn't leave the town account.
Okay, thanks.
Sure, thank you. Bob?
Chief Baker.
I have a little bit of concern about the parking along the side of the highway up there. Last time I went up there, it's a pretty darn narrow road. Has your commission spoke to our police chief and have him look at it and give him his recommendations onto your parking methods up there?
George, do you want to take that? I don't know if you spoke to anyone on that.
Microphone.
Do you want to come up? George Forscher has also been working on this. He's the secretary of the Historical Society.
No, we didn't talk to Kenny. Probably should have. I did talk to Ron Sweet at one point about the parking access and where people would be entering on the top of Pine. Excuse me. On the top of Pine Hill. There's on the hill itself, Bob. I think what you mean. The road is pretty narrow, but once you get around the corner, past the Sigler's house, there's a lot of room, I think, on the sides of the road for the occasional visitors. But no, we haven't talked to Kenny about his thoughts on the subject.
One thing worth clarifying too is this is going to be a nice weather venue. We're not going to be holding functions there in the wintertime when the road's narrowed by snow and that sort of thing. And I think if we did foresee a larger crowd, we would carpool people up from the bottom of the hill where there's more parking. So I really don't see that as being a issue for the most part, unless we have a huge group, and then we would come up with some other alternative means for parking. Are there any other questions?
Yep. Jan. Yep.
Is there any kind of contract or formal agreement that the town would have before they spend that money?
I can't really speak to that. Maybe Donna wants to say something about that. The Historical Society is signing an agreement with the owners. The town has been involved in the negotiations on this, so maybe Donna wants to say something.
There will be a formal agreement between the Historical Commission and the society, and the owners that's been approved by the town that we believe will protect the CPC fund investment.
Okay.
Somebody wants to move the question? Do we have a second for that move the question? Okay. I want to do a hand vote on moving the question. If you're in favor of move the question, I want to see hands. That's beautiful. Okay. We're moving the question. So we are now voting on Article 29B. Voting is open. Five more seconds. Voting is closed. 29B is passed, 96-10. Article 29C.
$21,000 request from the cemetery trustees for Howland and Pine Grove cemeteries for removal of hazardous trees from the Howland Cemetery from the budgeted reserve account.
Do I have a second? Discussion. Seeing no discussion, we're now voting on Article 29C. 5 more seconds. Voting is closed. 29C passes 97 to 7. $29D.
From fiscal year 2023 annual revenue, 10% to the Community Preservation Historical Resources Reserve, which is $9,471.64. 10% to the Community Preservation Community Housing Reserve, which is still $9,471.64. 10% to the Community Preservation Open Space Reserve, still $9,471.64. 5% from fiscal year 2021 annual revenues for administration of the Community Preservation Committee, which is $4,735.82, and the remainder to the Community Preservation Budgeted Reserve, which is $61,565.69.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing no hands, let's vote on Article 29D. Five more seconds. Voting is closed. D passes 92 to 7. Article 30.
I move that the town vote to authorize the Select Board to forward the citizens' petition on the Fair Share Amendment to local legislators.
I have a second. Any discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Priscilla Lynch, South Shropshire Road. This was submitted by Pixie Holbrook, who couldn't be here today, but I'm going to speak in favor of this article, and I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but it would be a 4% tax increase for anyone with an income over $1 million, and the money raised would be close to $2 billion, and that money would go towards education from preschool through public higher education and for roads and transportation, things that we really need. So that's what I like to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Mary?
I'm really glad somebody put this on the Conway Town Meeting warrant, because what we heard at pre-town meeting from our state representative, Natalie Blais, is that this is something before the legislature, and it's helpful for her to have votes like this from town meetings so that she knows what the communities that she represents feel about a particular issue. And the thing I want to really clarify about the Fair Share Amendment is that this is a 4%, we have state income tax. And then what this is a 4% increase in that state income tax only on your income over $1 million, your annual income. For all of you who are making more than $1 million a year, there'll be an extra 4%. But for the rest of us, there won't be an increase. This has nothing to do with how much your house is worth, how much you have in the bank, any kind of wealth or assets. This is only about annual income. So it's basically saying to the folks who make over $1 million a year, hey, we want you to pitch in some more because we have infrastructure and roads that need work, we have transportation that we need, and we have education that we want to support. So that's what this is about. And this is, sometimes people say, well, what does this have to do with Conway? It has everything to do with Conway. We have roads in Conway. We're standing in a school. This is creating extra money at the state level to support those things. And it's doing it on, you know, I don't know how much you make, but if somebody makes over $1 million a year in annual income, they can pitch in a little more than the rest of us. So I strongly suggest supporting this. Thanks.
Buck Storm.
You're probably not going to like what I have to say, but the fact of the matter is that 10% of the high earners in this country pay 90% of the taxes in this country. That's a fact. When you say that the rich don't pay their fair share, it's crazy. It's not a personal issue because you don't make $1 million. If you did, you'd be pissed off that you had to pay another $4,000 in taxes. The fact is, if you take the Ziegler Hill or McLeish's house on the hill, it's the most expensive house in town, and it's reduced the tax rate on everybody in this room because they pay so much taxes.
Nope.
I know. I just get upset at this because I think it's just unfair.
So can I speak to that?
Thank you, Bucky. Nelson first. Chris, you're second.
As I recall, we had to borrow money to pave Shelburne Falls Road, $1.2 million, is that correct? And we had to do that because Chapter 90 funds weren't available. Am I correct about that?
170,000.
170,000, okay, all right. So my numbers were way off. But the point is, we're not getting Chapter 90 funds the way that we used to maintain our roads. And the reason that we're not is because there's not enough money in the state government to do that. Chapter 90 funds are no longer being reimbursed at the same rate as we were previously. So as was mentioned earlier at town meeting, we cannot pave 10% of our roads, which is the goal. So this is just another issue about the fact that there's not enough money going around. There's too much money flowing to the top and not enough money going back, to municipalities, to the state.
Chris Waldo, Orchard Street. That might be true that the rich pay more taxes than anybody else, but that's also because they make an exorbitant amount, way more than we do. When my parents were my age, I believe that the separation between the average person's pay and the CEO's pay was around 16 times. It's now almost 6,000%. So I can understand that some of the money, obviously more of the money that is being paid in taxes is going to the rich, but the rich are far more rich now than they've ever been. It's just a fact. So again, if anybody here is affected by this, I'd be surprised, or you can be my life coach, because I'd love to know how. But we just have to have the facts out there, look it up. Like I said, CEOs' pays have increased exponentially over the last 20 years, 20, 30 years. So I just want to put that out there.
Jim.
Any other discussion?
Right here. So just to address, Bucky, your comment about 90% taxes in Conway. And what I think a lot of people don't realize is that in Massachusetts in general, and in small rural towns in particular, like ours, we in fact, the rest of us, subsidize the wealthiest among us. And this is through our school taxes. The way that it is determined how much we have to pay for our regional school assessment, the mandatory minimum payment, it's something called the EQV factor. And the way that they decide that, in large part, is by taking everybody's income in our zip code, divided by the number of taxpayers, comparing it to the same ratio for our neighboring 3 towns that are in our regional school, and that's how they determine who has to pay what. So when we have just one family, one taxpayer, that is really financially blessed, and they move into town, that raises everybody's school taxes. Many times we really struggle to understand why this year or why some previous year we've had a double-digit increase in our frontier assessment. And you look, and it's because we had one family move in that altered everybody else's. So right here, and this is just a Massachusetts thing where so much is nutty, and this is one of them, that towns like ours, rural towns, smaller towns, with few taxpayers, when one moves in, we all subsidize that person. It's true.
Any more discussion? Okay. Let's vote on Article 30. Five more seconds. Voting's closed. Article 30 passes 81-17. Article 31.
I move that the town vote to amend its general bylaws on the form and conduct of town government, the town meeting, to read as follows. Section 1. The annual town meeting for the election of town officers shall be considered the adjournment of the town meeting and shall be on the following Thursday after annual town meeting each year. Section 2. All business of the annual town meeting to be held on the first Saturday in June.
Second? Discussion.
So,
Seeing none, let's vote on Article 31. Five more seconds. Voting is closed. It passes 69-4. Article 32.
I move that the town vote to amend its general bylaws on legal to read as follows. Section 4. The Select Board may annually appoint a member of the bar who is in good standing to serve as town council for the term of 1 year from the first day of July following annual town meeting and until his or her, successor is appointed and enters upon the performance of his duties, their duties. They shall likewise fill any vacancy in said office for the unexpired term and may employ special counsel to assist said town council whenever, in their judgment, necessity therefore arises.
Second? Discussion? Seeing no hands, let's vote on Article 32. Five more seconds. Voting is closed. Article 32 has passed 80-1. Article 33.
I move that the town vote to amend its general bylaws by adding a new section to establish and authorize revolving funds for use by certain town departments, boards, committees, and agencies or officers as set forth in the warrant.
Second?
Second.
Discussion. Mary McClintock.
I have a really basic question because I'm lousy at this financial stuff. What's a revolving fund as opposed to some other kind of fund?
Jan?
Feel free to chime in if you want, but a revolving fund is an account that receives revenue from some sources, and then you're allowed to, or town employee can spend it with authorization to a certain limit. Did I pass? Good.
Is this going to be exclusive, or are all the existing ones grandfathered?
Basically, the Municipal Modernization Act passed about 5 years ago, and prior to that, this statute that set up revolving funds required that you vote every revolving fund, the name of it, the entity authorized to have it, what fees and charges would go in, who could spend them, what they could spend them on, and the maximum for each year. 5 years ago, the Municipal Modernization Act said that this now needs to be a town bylaw. So we're just cleaning up and now making it a town bylaw. From here on out, the only thing you'll be voting, unless you add a revolving fund to your list of revolving funds, is the name of the revolving fund and the maximum for the year. So that'll only be the things you'll vote in your warrant rather than all of this, because you'll have a revolving fund bylaw. So that's what this does.
Any other discussion?
Get a second on that?
Okay. Let's vote. Five more seconds. Voting is closed. Motion's passed, 79-2. Article 34.
I move that the town vote to amend its general bylaws by replacing the word council with the word council as referenced in the bylaws.
Second? Any discussion? Let's vote on Article 34. Five seconds. Voting is closed. Article passes 71-1. One. Can't make it up. Article 35.
I move that the town vote to amend its protective zoning bylaws by adopting a new Article 7 floodplain district, which would replace the existing Article 7, Section 71 floodplain district and Section 72 development regulations with a new Article 7, Sections 711 to 711.5 as set forth in the warrant.
I have a motion and second. Any discussion or Beth explanation? Okay. Sure.
Okay. Hello, I'm Beth Gershman. I'm the chair of the planning board, and I live on Hoosick Road. And I just want to say, we're at the end of town meeting. This is so great, and you've all hung in here. Congratulations to us. So I hope that people had a chance to pick up the handout that was on the table near the maps of the floodplain district. If not, I can have volunteers send them around. It's a two-sided handout, has red little words on the back. Thank you very much. Oh, wait. I need one of those back so I can talk about this. First, I want to say that the planning board voted unanimously to recommend this article following a public hearing of May 12th, 2022. We also had several public information sessions on this. I don't know how many people had a chance to attend those over Zoom. So I'm not going to read from this handout. I am just going to skip to some of the more salient points for me. Is that the National Flood Insurance Program requires the amendments to be made to this bylaw in order for the town to be in compliance with National Flood Insurance Program minimum requirements. If the town does not adopt these amendments, residents who live within the floodplain district may not be eligible for federal flood insurance. So this was suggested to us as a bylaw change, and it's not an amendment, it's actually a wholesale replacement of our existing bylaw. It was suggested to us from the Franklin County Council of Regional Government. Did I get that? That's right, yeah. FERCOG is what I usually call it. And this is based on the state model floodplain bylaw that they are asking every town and city and community in Massachusetts to take a look at and revise. The proposed changes in the bylaw does not change the floodplain district at all. It actually makes very few changes to the existing bylaw. The changes include, and you can see this on your handout, slightly revised language in the purpose section and in definitions to conform with the state model floodplain bylaw. The designation of a community floodplain administrator, which is an added duty for our town administrator, and she agreed to it. Thank you. And some permitting. Local, state, and federal permits will be required before any proposed development in the floodplain overlay district can take place. It's actually, so before we go on with that, I'm wondering if anyone has any questions that they want to raise for me about this. Zero questions. This seems clear to people? Okay. So I want to point out that the flood, oh, okay. Lee Wickham. Thank you. Thanks.
Having the town administrator take over as community floodplain administrator, does that add to her duties the permitting for structures and work and so forth in that area, or does that stay with our building permit, building inspector and that type of thing?
Yes, the permitting stays with the existing permitting designated.
So they continue to be our zoning regulation officers?
Yes.
Thank
This
you.
is actually, sadly, an added level of bureaucratic management for our town administrator. Okay. No other questions on this? Wow, okay. So now I have to make, okay, so now I'm going to beg your indulgence because I'm going to move to amend Article 35 with 3 minor language changes. So on the back of the handout in red are several words and one sentence that I'm asking to be amended to what is in the warrant. I might have said this clumsily. Is that okay? Donna says it's okay. So those three things are in 7.2. It's an additional bunch of words which explains a particular map. In section 7.7, there's a sentence, there is no subdivision control law in the town of Conway, special town meeting, Article 4, October 17th, 2011. And section 7.10, it adds again the same wording, flood boundary and floodway map. I just want to also reiterate that the maps that we are referring to, which are, we keep calling the firm maps, which are the flood insurance rate map, those are held at the town clerk's office currently. If you're ever curious, you can go take a look there during office hours, and also held at our floodplain administrator's desk. If it passes. If this passes, right.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what we have. He's going to, yes. Help Jimmy.
Okay.
On the amendment.
We need a second on the amendment. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion about the additional language she would like to add? Okay, if there's none, I'm going to ask for a voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. That's amended. Now we're going to vote on the amended article. Yep. Okay? So we're going to click this one. Of course you can. Let's vote.
Or trees.
5 more seconds. Voting is closed. Yes, it has to be a 2/3. And we passed 82 to 3.
Aye. 3:30.
I know I'm on it, huh?
On it.
Okay, just quickly, we're done with the articles, and I know we all want to get out of here, but I want to thank you for your patience today. These are long meetings sometimes, but I tell you, everybody was great. Can I see a show of hands of anybody who's here for the first time?
Wow.
Okay, that's 9 of you. That's awesome. I'm being asked to ask if any of you have the warrant light, and did it help you at all? Okay. That's great. Also, just a quick funny story. Somebody's not at town meeting right now who's always here, and his name is Malcolm Kors. And he's feeling a little under the weather, and I saw him this morning, and he said, I don't think I'm going to make the meeting. When he said that, I happened to be in Baker's store, and the regulars were all there. And when Malcolm said that, I said, Malcolm, I said, you just made me change my prediction that town meeting was going to go from 1 to 4 to 1 to 3:30. And Malcolm even laughed. How'd I do? So, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second? Oh.
What? What?
Discussion? Please vote on Thursday. And thank you.